Good afternoon. More than a year has passed since our last video. As they say, a lot of water has passed under the bridge. But there are no fewer topics for investigation into the cochlear implant market. By the way, do you remember the heroes of our previous stories? Due at least in part to our investigations, Euromax companies began to work officially. Cochlear partners now compete for Russian patients, not using strange and suspicious enrichment schemes. We have analyzed a huge amount of information from open sources, in particular this website, GlobusWeb. Hundreds of thousands of documents on the foreign economic activities of companies working with government procurement are accumulated here. Our experts have discovered that another, this time, French cochlear brand tried with all its might to win Russian customer, laundering profits and evaded paying taxes in Russia. The French Nurelec, which is imported by the audio tech company, has created a whole scheme to avoid paying income taxes as a result of withdrawing real income from taxation. The scenario is familiar. Watch the first series of our investigations. In order to minimize income tax, the purchase of goods is proceeded on behalf of a front foreign company at a price several percent lower than the sales price in the Russian Federation. Oops! And tax to the budget is paid from the minimum income. Over past 10 years, Audiotech has sold Nurelec cochlear implants under 47 contracts worth more than 1.5 billion. And here is a list of medical institutions Audiotech and Nurelec are conveniently cooperating with. We will talk about it separately later on today. There is only one main customer, Nikolai Arkadyevich Dyhes. It was he who brought them to the Russian market and imposed them on Yakutia. Our expert Ekaterina, a customs service specialist, for obvious reasons we are obliged to keep her identity confidential, made the following conclusion after studying all the documents we have provided on the economic activities of Audiotech. As we see from documents from government procurement websites for 2019-2021, Audiotech sold on the Russian market 527 Digisonic multi-channel cochlear implant systems, 363 behind-the-ear processors, DGSP or DGSPK or Sapphire. At the same time, in the documents with customs data, the following fact attracts attention. When importing goods, Audiotech does not use the import of goods directly from the manufacturer Nurelec, France, but uses a scheme to evade taxes in Russia through a fake legal entity, the Lebanese Dyhes Group, where the profits are accumulated. It is noteworthy that the prices per unit of the same product imported under different foreign economic contracts of Audiotech through Dyhes Group at the same time with Istok Audio Med differ from the French manufacturer's prices by almost 2 times. On the screen, you see a comparison table made by Ekaterina. Our expert believes that since 2010, the companies Audiotech and Ramtech, owned by the same family, have laundered at least 1,300 million rubles. We have also discovered that when importing goods in 2021, Audiotech used a new fake organization, already registered in the United Arab Emirates, NCTS. But suddenly, the conquest of Russia by the French Nurelec stopped. Just don't think that justice has prevailed and the competent authorities have paid attention to unscrupulous medical businessmen. The company simply went bankrupt.
Чё? Вы банкрот.
And those who lobbied for its interests on the Russian market urgently had to look for a new source of profit.
Я завтра с утра еду наверх, посоветуюсь там. Мне уже сегодня обещали, его пробьют по своей вертикали. Давайте, ребята, родные, в темпе вальса.
All these years spent trying to figure out how the business with deaf patients was structured, we increasingly discovered blatant fraud in that part of Russian healthcare that is designed to help solve the problems of the hearing impaired. You will be surprised, but for those, or more precisely for the one who is responsible for all of Russian otorhinolaryngology, solving the problems of the hearing impaired means making money from the hearing impaired.
И не сомневайся, ты благое дело делаешь. И хотя говорят, что благие дела делают радостно и легко, нельзя забывать, враг-то не дремлет.
And earning money exclusively for yourself. Meet Nikolai Dyhes. It would take too much time to list all the positions and titles of these big men, literally and figuratively speaking. Here is a list of the main ones that Nikolai Dyhes uses as a golden key to open the doors to money from government orders, grants and investments. If you are interested, press pause and read the entire document. For us, the most important thing is that Nikolai Dyhes is the person who determines the health policy in the development of ENT. And it was precisely his personality that all the investigations of our channel rested on. There had been accumulated too much material, and we decided to dedicate today's video to Nikolai Dyhes.
Власть, Коля, надо знать в лицо.
Dyhes Nikolai Arkadievich belongs to a dynasty of ENT doctors from Astrakhan. Young Nikolai chose a career over family tradition and moved to Moscow in the 80s, as he admitted, to make money. At the Institute for Advanced Medical Studies of the USSR Ministry of Health, Nikolai became friends with another hereditary doctor, Hassan Davudov. Dyhes and Davudov studied at the same clinical residency. Together wrote more than 10 scientific papers on ENT oncology, became candidates of medical sciences the same year, and then defended their doctoral thesis. By the early 1990s, they already held positions as professors in the Department of Otolaryngology of the Russian Academy of Postgraduate Education. But let's digress here and remember what Moscow was like in the 90s. All those who later played controversial but noticeable roles in the politics and economy of Russia came here to make money. And yesterday's teachers, police officers, actors, and even doctors came into their service. All state employees who found themselves destitute. The entrepreneurial talent of Nikolai Dyhes and Hassan Davudov did not go unnoticed. Apart from working in medicine in those difficult years, they managed to work in the banking sector and in the rapidly developing elite construction. Their paths crossed with many odious personalities, whose names are still heard today. The friends were shareholders of Lespромbank, which was notorious in the market for transits, cashing, and withdrawals of funds. Dr. Dyhes was on the board of directors of this bank. He also led several commercial companies. Having found himself in the right circles of officials and businessmen during the formation of a new economic system of a new country, in the late 90s, our Dr. Dyhes unexpectedly became a deputy of the State Duma. Where did he end up on the federal lists of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation? From the Republic of Kalmykia. But most of all, Dyhes, the deputy, was remembered for his complaints to the Prosecutor General's office about UCAS, thanks to which, as we see from today, the far-sighted Nikolai Arkadievich earned incentive points from the state, at least in the form of not interfering with his personal enrichments. Dyhes has never officially declared any commercial income. In the 90s, he lectured at medical universities. The salary of a Moscow professor at that time was 1,200 rubles, or a third of the subsistence level. In the State Duma, Dyhes earned $15,000 a year. This is the cost of 3 Zhiguli cars. It's not that much still. However, the standard of living of Dyhes then and now clearly does not correspond to official income. In the 90s, he changed cars every 2 years. In addition to Zhiguli and Volga, his fleet included the Lincoln Continental, Mercedes-Benz, and Grand Cherokee, which was scarce at that time. As to real estate, we can note at least 3 apartments in different areas of Moscow. And how much money does Dr. Dyhes earn as a director of the National Medical Research Center for Otorhinolaryngology? The average official annual income of Nikolai Arkadievich at the National Medical Center is 3.5 million rubles, or 300,000 rubles per month before taxes. At the same time, a residential building with an area of 1.196 square meters and an approximate cost of half a billion rubles is registered to the director. And since 2003, his family has owned an estate in the village of Salkovo. On the spacious territory, there is a 3-story master's house of a relatively small area, only 210 square meters, a 2-story guest house with outbuildings of 144 square meters, and a security house of 126 square meters. It's modest in size, but it's important to understand what kind of place it is. The village of Salkovo is located in the famous Rublevka. Nikolai Dyhes has amounts that are not comparable with the official salary. In 2012, he lent $4 million to his sworn friend Hassan Davudov. Friendship, it must be said, to Nikolai Arkadievich comes at a high cost.
Ну что, круто! Круто, вы за меня взялись, надо сказать.
But let's return to the National Medical Research Center for Otorhinolaryngology, which Nikolai Dyhes has been heading since 2004. You know, while we were studying the biography of Dyhes, from time to time I wanted to justify him a little. Well, who didn't try to be a businessman in the 90s? What if he was lucky and just took a chance and simply put a business talent that not everyone has into practice? Well, why not?
Я очень рад, потому что все это некий бренд, ну так сказать, ваш бренд. Брендом сейчас верят люди, да, депутаты возлагают серьезные надежды.
Maybe he also successfully managed the State National Medical Center at the same time. Perhaps, thanks to his business talents, he made a significant contribution to the development of domestic otorhinolaryngology. Unfortunately, no. Having been a leader of the center, he provided employment to his relatives, acquaintances, and their acquaintances. His sister, his cousin, the daughter of ex-deputy chairman of the government of Dagestan Gadji Makhachev, the son of former State Duma deputy Sergei Rishulsky, used to work or have worked under his leadership. The same Hasan Davudov worked as his deputy for almost 10 years, and Davudov's daughter also works there. All these people have not only received prestigious and well-paid jobs, they have defended their candidate and doctoral thesis at the research center. And all this has happened under the initiative of Nikolai Arkadyevich. His eldest son Arkady, already a candidate of medical sciences by the age of 31, has had a successful career as a civil servant. In addition, he used to work as the head of the Department for Supporting National Medical Research Centers in the Ministry of Health. In other words, having been his father's direct supervisor. It is not difficult to guess which Federal Medical Biological Agency's scientific institution out of 30 existing ones receives the greatest ministerial support. Now, Arkady Nikolaevich Dyhes is a Deputy General Director for Strategic Development of the Federal Scientific and Clinical Center for Medical Rehabilitation and Balneotherapy of FMBA. What is the National Medical Research Center for Otorhinolaryngology, headed by Nikolai Dyhes? We have already said that this is a scientific institution of the Federal Medical and Biological Agency, the main state structure which, among other things, distributes money for very expensive medical needs of the population that citizens cannot afford, and the state assumes obligations for saving a person or improving the quality of his life. The latter directly concerns patients in need of cochlear implantation. Each such operation costs the state more than 1.5 million rubles. All operations are carried out in just a few specialized centers, and the largest is managed by Nikolai Dyhes. This medical center is the only federal center with a branch network from the far east to the south of Russia. For reference, order dated April 7, 2021, number 309 of the Ministry of Health of the Russian Federation. 1.2. A network of national medical research centers is formed on the basis of organizations carrying out scientific and/or scientific and technical activities subordinate to the Ministry of Health of the Russian Federation, which are leaders in priority areas of development and healthcare and medical science. I wonder how Dr. Dyhes' institution, which is not subordinate to the Ministry of Health but to the FMBA, has received the status of the National Research Center.
Ну ты скажи уж, что за информация такая?
Не надо вам знать, что за информация.
Apparently, Nikolai Arkadyevich had made the most of good time. After all, this is at least 300 million rubles of additional funding per year. Dr. Dyhes modestly keeps silent about the fact that 10 years ago the largest ENT institution in the country had twice as many branches, not 2, but 4. Before the opening of the main center in Moscow, it was profitable to use budget funds through the regions, and then branches became unnecessary. Nikolai Dyhes chose to close the branches in Ufa and Tomsk, and now patients from Siberia travel to Moscow at their own expense. Take a look at what patients wrote in the petition regarding the closure of the Tomsk branch. What kind of deaf non-humans do you have to be in order to deprive other people of a normal life for reasons of profit? The range of medical services at the center headed by Dyhes includes several thousand items. However, judging by the numbers, Nikolai Dyhes is obsessed with one medical service: cochlear implantation. Since 2014, he has spent 9 billion rubles through government contracts and government programs. He spent almost half of his budget, 4 billion, on the purchase of cochlear implantation systems. In Russia, the cost of cochlear implantation at public expense exceeds $20,000 or 1.5 million rubles. A cochlear device is a high-tech medical product that requires huge investments in research, development, and maintenance. It is produced by leading specialized scientific companies from Australia, the United States, Austria, and France. But what should cause concern among hearing-impaired patients is lobbying for the interests of unknown manufacturers of ear implants, which can also be offered on behalf of state clinics, for the same 1.5 million rubles that the state will allocate. For example, Nikolai Dyhes fell in love with the Chinese company Neurotron, which is called the price killer all over the world. A study on Neurotron's development says that the developer managed to reduce the cost of his cochlear implants to $4,600, and Nikolai Dyhes is lobbying for the expansion of this brand in our country. Although these products have not yet been studied as much as the same cochlear, advanced bionics or metal. But the most disgusting thing is that inviting Neurotron to Russia, Dyhes does not have the seemingly obvious goal of reducing the cost of operations to install cochlear implants for the Russian budget, since they are so cheap from the Chinese manufacturer. We are still talking about installing unexplored and cheaply purchased implants for the same 1.5 million rubles. Also, let's go back to the brand that we mentioned at the beginning of the film. Remember the French Nurelec, the one which during its presence on the Russian market through Audiotech underpaid taxes by more than 1.5 billion rubles. And the Chinese Neurotron has the same scheme. It is supplied by Van Maurik Medical. It is an importer to Russia of goods from the Chinese Zhejiang Neurotron biotechnology company. And in the period from 2017 to 2022, this company participated in 15 government contracts worth more than $500 million rubles. The latter supplied these products from the Chinese manufacturer Neurotron. Where do you think? To the National Medical Research Center of Otorhinolaryngology of the FMBA. To Dr. Dyhes. According to our information, Van Maurik Medical has business ties with the Chinese manufacturer Neurotron. But at the same time, they do not purchase cochlear devices directly from China, but use a front company registered in Hong Kong. This is how our customs expert Ekaterina commented on data from open sources. When importing goods, Van Maurik Medical does not import goods directly from the manufacturer Zhejiang Neurotron biotechnology company, but uses a scheme to evade taxes in Russia through a legal entity in Hong Kong, Neurotrade Limited, where profits are accumulated. Having studied customs declarations, we calculated that in 2022, the Hong Kong-based Neurotrade Limited sold 100 cochlear implantation systems to the Russian Van Maurik Medical for $1.9 million, or 114 million rubles. Next, Van Maurik Medical supplied goods to the center headed by Nikolai Dyhes for 127 million. The Hong Kong company purchased cochlear implants from a Chinese manufacturer at a price of no more than $5,000 and imported them to Russia for no less than $18,000. So $1.4 billion could have ended up in accounts in Hong Kong.
Ну, допустим, дальше что? Ладно, ну давайте поглядим. Что вы нам тут пытаетесь втюхать?
And this is just one example. But there are much more. In 2022, the center headed by Dr. Dyhes received 165 cochlear systems from China, and in 2023, already 200. According to our calculations, Van Maurik Medical has set a kind of record for money laundering and tax evasion. But this is not enough for Nikolai Dyhes. He continues to promote Chinese systems at every opportunity. That's what he said at a meeting of the public chamber in October last year. We have unique experience in our country. We can install all 5 types, and in one institute. Sometimes we have 5-6 surgeries a day. We have the opportunity to compare. That's why we are now working with China, because they listen to our experience, and they do it today. They do it better. Let's translate it. Russia is a testing laboratory for new systems from China. Before, they used to be incomprehensible French, now China. This is how it turns out that cochlear implantation systems, which cost $5,000–6,000 in China and have not been yet sufficiently researched in the world, end up in Russia at prices higher by several digits. And they become a means of enrichment for those who supply them here. What can you call this, if not a robbery? We have already talked about a cartel agreement and the purchase of equipment from foreign manufacturers, not directly, but through some front companies being registered abroad. We have told you how unscrupulous suppliers pay meager taxes to the Russian budget.
Нежно так, ласково потрогаем за эти самые фабержи и все.
Trying to understand those schemes, we came across Dr. Dyhes. After all, in addition to the post of director of the National Medical Research Center, he holds the position of a chief freelance otolaryngologist of the Ministry of Health and FMBA. This is a person who determines health policy in the development of the entire ENT field, but surprisingly, actively promotes the most controversial manufacturers of cochlear implants. 10 years ago, his protégé was the French company Nurelec. Yes, we are talking about this brand again. Its share in the global cochlear implantation market has never been more than 3%. This is an outsider company, and its representative, Audiotech Ramtech, as before, worked under grey tax evasion schemes and continues to work in the usual way. In the meantime, Nurelec implants had been implanted in no less than 1,500 patients, and then the company went bankrupt and left the market. But who is now servicing the French warranty, and how the replacement of their speech processors will be carried out in 5 years? Had the chief freelance otolaryngologist of the FMBA and the Ministry of Health ever thought about this? The main thing is that the budget money is spent, and who cares about abandoned patients? But what about our supplier, Audiotech Ramtech, which simply does not fulfill the terms of the government contract, according to which the guarantee for implants is 10 years, and for speech processors, 5. What is in store for patients? Obviously, it is reimplantation with replacement of the implant of another manufacturer. Well, what about our Audiotech? There is no time to waste for it, building a new money laundering scheme for Dr. Dyhes. Nikolai Arkadievich keeps Chinese Neuratron in his favorites. Nikolai Dyhes shows direct interest in saturating the Russian market with Chinese devices. At the Army 2021 Military Technical Forum, he dared to use the Minister of Defense for his own purposes. Under the guise of rehabilitation means for military personnel, Dyhes showed Sergei Shoigu a 3D skull and Neuratron cochlear implants. Dyhes' trick was subsequently used by then Maurik Medical for advertising purposes. The same 3D skull was shown by Neuratron at the forum in the fall of 2022. Let us note that in the official FMBA release from Army 2021, there was not a word about Neuratron. Probably even Russian Health Minister Veronika Skvartsova was not aware of Dyhes' plan to promote the civilian device. Yeah, we really haven't been around for a long time, and that's why a lot of material has accumulated. The hero of our investigation, Dr. Dyhes, is a versatile and active personality, and everything he undertakes brings undeniable benefits. First of all, in the form of money, big money for himself. But as often happens, the active energy of such gifted and audacious individuals is not aimed at improving and developing the industry to which they are directly related. How much could be done for ENT patients if such medical officials were directly involved in their duties? What convenient and beautiful medical centers could be built using funds not allocated for personal enrichment? How much budget money could have been saved and used to make Russian medicine a model for other countries? But for now, Nikolai Dyhes deliberately chooses as partners not those companies that work officially and pay taxes to the Russian budget, but those with whom he can build shady schemes. Guess why?
А я волнуюсь, блядь, ребята! Потому что жопой чую, зреет под ногами что-то.
Unfortunately, these questions sound rhetorical and have no answer, not in the subjunctive mood. And all this happens because such businessmen from medicine work in our healthcare. They have nothing to do with the mission that any normal and respectable person with a doctor's diploma and wearing a lab coat undertakes. For example, Nikolai Arkadievich Dyhes sends such requests on behalf of himself, the chief freelance otolaryngologist, to regional ministries and committees. That said, he omits the clarification freelance. It's somehow not respectable, and he draws up requests on letter forms with the heraldry of the Ministry of Health. He asks for no less than the patient's last name, first name, patronymic, date of birth, contact phone number, company of the cochlear implantation system, and all information about the operation performed. In fact, such information constitutes a medical secret, and the chief freelance otolaryngologist knows this. That's why he had come up with the idea of misleading the heads of regional departments by drawing up the document as if on behalf of the Ministry of Health. At the same time, the chief freelance specialist is not an organization subordinate to the Ministry of Health, and he doesn't have the right to use the emblem of the organization. Why is he doing this?
Вот и все насекомые. Никак не хотите по-хорошему, да? Вот поэтому тонете в говне.
We have repeatedly mentioned that we will tell you even more about Nikolai Dyhes' projects in the following episodes, and we are already working on them. The fact is that the active Nikolai Arkadievich has a lot of projects and plans, and there's a risk of confusing you if we will tell about everything at once. So see you soon on this channel.
Ой-ой, только не продолжай, я уже обосрался.
As usual, you can send all your comments, as well as additional information to this investigation and ideas for new episodes to our email. The new film will be released very soon, so we won't say goodbye for long.